You're listening to the BBM Global Network with 25 years in broadcast audio and video production. Our passionate team creates content and marketing for the world of Internet Talk Radio. If you've got a passion, come join us at bbmglobalnetwork.com. The BBM Global Network. Your voice is now heard.
We all need self-expression. The most effective way to express ourselves is through words. But according to the Stuttering Foundation, close to 80 million people worldwide stutter today. This is Live Stutter-Free with your host, Anna Deeter. After years of practicing conventional speech therapy, Anna Deeter has pioneered a new and effective approach to this debilitating habit. So now, please welcome the host of Live Stutter-Free, Anna Deeter.
Good part of the day and welcome to Live Stutter-Free with your host Anna Deeter on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I am a founder and a passionate pioneer of a new profession called Etalon Speech Education, and I am no longer a speech therapist or pathologist or any type of a medical profession. So Live Stutter-Free's mission is to reveal all the mysteries around stuttering, stammering, cluttering, or any other so-called speech fluency disorders. As they believe, the whole world still believes this misconception. Some kind of a medical condition with no known cure. Yes, my name is Anna Deeter and I'm just a messenger of one message, shocking, revolutionary truth. Stuttering is solved. Stuttering basically was solved 20 years ago. I'm here to disclose all misconceptions that we as a society believe in. If you open any source of conventional information today, any medical dictionary, any online source of information, you will basically see exactly the same statement, pretty much the same. No one knows what causes stuttering. No one knows what it is, but speech therapy may help. So wait a second. No one knows what causes stuttering, including speech therapists. They also don't know what causes stuttering, but they are, of course, genuine people. They are big-hearted people. And I am just presenting the truth, the reality that we as a society have been programmed to believe so many lies. And it's not just about stuttering, about anything, basically. You know, some people think that they have lied to us about almost everything, but I'm not going to generalize like this because I specialize on a very narrow message. This is my mission, and this is what I will disclose over the course of Live Stutter-Free, several shows, okay? So once again, stuttering sickness as a medical condition, stuttering sickness doesn't exist in reality. And there is no need for any kind of stuttering cure, treatment, or even, check this out, no need for the long-term speech training, believe it or not. Stuttering is not a sickness. Stuttering is not a neurological disorder, not a genetic problem, not a medical condition of any sort that requires a cure or treatment. Be ready. You will learn what the real cause of stuttering is. It was determined 20 years ago. And it was determined in the country called Russia by one independent scientist, and of course, a genius man, not like you and I. Okay? There is one in, hundreds or thousands or even millions people, like my mentor, academic Roman Alexeyevich Snezhko, who basically solved the mystery of stuttering. He has determined the definitive cause and the mechanism of stuttering. As an Etalon Speech Educator, I can answer every single question that has ever been asked, but never been answered realistically about stuttering. So here it is. You're gonna learn what the real cause and the mechanism of stuttering is. It is a so-called block stupor. Block stupor. If you're not familiar with the word stupor, I recommend you go to the dictionary. Of course, online dictionary is the easiest one, and see what it means. And it's an English word, and you can see the definition. They say stupor is a state of unconsciousness or some kind of no sensibility. So insensible, a person kind of not in his body, not in his mind for this very brief, hopefully, very brief moment. But the key word is, of course, the word block. The main reason of each and every strange behavior of a person who stutters is a block. Because stupor is the condition of lack of sensibility and unconsciousness that has the reason, right? So the cause of this state that every person who stutters enters is the block. Each and every person who stutters is blocked. And I want you to understand what it is, what it means blocked, because it's very important. Imagine a person who has his hands cuffed together, okay? He has this handcuffs on his hands. And this person wants to learn to play basketball. So we give him the best trainer. The basketball trainer tells him, okay, you gotta dribble the ball. You gotta throw the ball this way, that way. And this person with his hands restricted, he may learn somehow how to play basketball well. I mean, somehow. It's not well, it's not normal like everyone else, but he may learn. So now, but can we call this person sick if he simply has handcuffs? He doesn't have the freedom of the movement of his body just like everyone else. Will any cure help him to become free to move his hands and play like everyone else around? Of course not. Maybe we need to give him more practice, play more basketball. Then you're going to learn how to play like everyone else. No. This is, no matter how much he would be training, he will still be playing like someone that is something wrong with this person, someone abnormal. You have to understand, when you have a block, you don't have to have any cure, you don't have to have any treatment or long-term speech training. But you don't want to miss the next segment. You are going to meet someone special to my heart and to the whole world. It's gotta be the very first Englishman who got unblocked. So stay tuned. You will learn a lot of truth. Talk to you in a bit.
You've been listening to Live Stutter-Free with your host, Anna Deeter. Listen each week and learn how to become unblocked, liberated, and live stutter-free with host Anna Deeter.
And Live Stutter-Free is back with your host, Anna Deeter, on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Yes, I am the messenger. I am sharing the truth. I am disclosing a lot of misconceptions about stuttering, stammering, cluttering, mumbling, stumbling, or whatever they call this so-called medical stuttering sickness, medical condition. And today we are going to have a very special guest. You will get to hear from the very first Englishman, a person who was able to get unblocked in only 3 days. He was the pioneer, as I like to tell him, that he is a pioneer like Yuri Gagarin, the first man to go to space. Okay, so you will get to hear him, and you will get to hear his amazing story about how he got blocked, because this is what interests me. I want to know how he developed his blocks and how he could not see these blocks. They were invisible to him. And who were his blockers? So who blocked him? So anyway, Roger, are you there?
Hello, Anna. I'm here.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm so excited. Okay, so Roger is here. And you know what? Why don't you kind of introduce yourself? You can do it yourself.
I think you did quite a good introduction there, calling me a pioneer. Thanks for that.
Yes,
I'll try and build upon that.
Yes.
Right. Well, my name is Roger. I'm 37 years of age, and I'm really nervous being on the radio for the first time. So please bear with me.
Welcome to the club. I'm also nervous.
I come from a town called Lancaster in the UK, and I'm a professional chef. I started out my career as a pastry chef for the first 10 years, and the last 10 years I've been a head chef and a sous chef. And I've worked all around the country and a couple of places abroad as well. I love to travel, and that really fits in with my passion for photography as well. I love listening to music and learning new things, especially on YouTube, such as video editing recently. And I've also acquired an obsession with the field of cryptocurrency recently, which I'm sure is taking up for the country.
The whole world obsessed about this cryptocurrency. You know what? It's a good thing. You're learning.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I'm only learning at the moment, and just really interested in the technology and what it can bring to the world to help everybody to, Well, I'm a family man. I like spending time with my family, and obviously work as well takes up a lot of my time. I met Anna way back.
You know what? I just want to interrupt you. Can you just a little bit tell about what you do at work?
Okay, so I normally get in the morning and I sign off the invoices for the orders that have arrived. We've already written a job list the night before, so I give a debriefing to the staff on what functions we've got for that day or for the following day, and then we crack on and I explain to the junior members of staff what needs doing, and we'll discuss and then crack on with our jobs. During the day is very verbal. There's a lot of communication that needs to go on to make sure everything comes together at the same time. I work maybe 10, 12 hours a day.
Oh, wow. 10 hours a day? No way.
Yeah, I'd say in the majority of kitchen, it depends on where you're working, I guess. In fact, the job that I'm working at the moment, I do either split shifts or straights, and it's probably about 10 hours. But yeah, there are other jobs that I've had in the past. I used to work for Gordon Ramsay for a couple of years, a couple of his restaurants down in London, and jobs in the Lake District at 2 Rosette to Michelin star standard. And we could work up to 14, 16, 18 hours a day sometimes. So it is kind of very stressful, not only with the pressure of the job, especially if you have problems with your speech as well. It's impacted because it's a big part.
Wait a second. If you have a problem with your speech,
yeah,
what did you
I'm
just
talking
say?
about in the past.
Okay, you know what, Rog? Let's go to the past, because time is running. I'm looking at the time at the clock and I want to cover so much. Yeah, so let's go to the past. And of course, I kind of told you already before the show that the focus that I have today during the show is to learn how various people develop stuttering, how various people block, because as you know, but our listeners may not even aware of that stuttering or blocking begins in the early childhood. So you have an amazing story, and I believe I still don't know the whole story. Every time I talk to you, I learn something else. So how did the whole thing start? So can you tell us a little bit about your early childhood? Did you just have normal childhood, like you were born in set of parents and they raised you? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do. And I have no script, so this is off the cuff. Yeah, right. So when I was around 2 years of age, I had to be put into foster care because my biological parents were not able to take care of me for reasons. And so between the ages of maybe 2 and 4, I was put into care, is what they call it in the UK. So I must have had, foster care. So I must have been around maybe 4 to 6 different families during the space of those 2 years when I was developing, into the human being that I am today.
Yeah. Yes. You know what? Let's talk a little bit about this damage, because this is where the very first blocks come to a little one, to a young child. Unfortunately, the very first blockers are people around the baby, the ones who love him the most. Even if you were in a family, raised by one family, even if it was the case, it's always people around a child. It makes me really sad, because this is what it is. When the parents do not organize, do not provide a stimulating environment for a child to develop his speaking skills normally, something happens in the child's life, and the parents may cause a child to learn some wrong things, okay? And this is exactly what happens to, I would say, probably 99% of people who stutter. When they're young, they learn some horrible untruths about themselves. So you were 2 to 4 years old when you were moving from family to family, right? Did I get it right?
Yeah, that's right.
And guess what? That's the time when the most important part happens. When we people develop our more mature speaking skills, 2, 4. Of course, more mature as we mature, but 2 to 4 is crucial. This is a crucial time when you learn to speak. And if at this moment you were transferred from one family to another family, guess what you learned as a young baby? You learned to please everyone because you wanted to have mommy and daddy.
Yeah, right? And I think that's continued throughout my teens and forward into my 20s and 30s. I do feel I am a little bit of a people pleaser, and I don't want to disappoint anybody. And I feel that has definitely been...
Yeah, you know what, Roj? They just told me we're coming to the commercial break.
Okay.
We are having fun. I don't know about you. We are having fun.
I'm just getting warmed up.
I know. Okay. Please don't go anywhere. Tune in. You're going to hear an amazing story about blocks and blockers. This is the next section of Live Stutter-Free. Talk to you in a bit.
You've been listening to Live Stutter-Free with your host, Anna Deeter. Listen each week and learn how to become unblocked, liberated, and live stutter-free with host Anna Deeter.
Thank you so much for listening to Live Stutter-Free with your host Anna Deeter on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And today, I am introducing to you an amazing individual. His name is Roger Thompson. He lives in United Kingdom, and he was the first one who became unblocked in the 3-day Etalon Speech Gymnastics course. Stuttering is solved. Stutterers are not sick people. They are healthy but blocked. Every person who stutters has a unique set of blocks, and they are invisible for him or her. These blocks restrict his freedom to move adequately, his speech organs, the way all people do. So once again, Roger Thompson is here, and he was telling in the first segment about how he was placed in the foster care when he was really young, 2 to 4 years old. And he had to change 4 to 6 families. Can you imagine? All he learned when he was kind of changing these families, his sets of mommy and daddy 4, 6 times, he learned how to please. How to please. He wanted to be loved. It could be anything. One of the parents kind of were maybe tired coming back from work, and at this moment Roger was talking, expressing himself. And guess what? This foster parent, maybe tired from work, could say, oh, can you just shut up? Can you be quiet? You scream one more time, I'm gonna beat your butt. This could happen. Who knows? He doesn't remember. He was too young. Right, Roger?
Yeah, that's right.
So I just wanted you to confirm, because you don't remember how it happened. This is the first block, loved by everyone. And this is when he learned his very first block. This is a block because when a child believes that every time he screams, he learns that he needs to hide his voice, his self-expression. He needs to hide it. And instead of letting the voice out, he learns to be quiet. He learns to keep silent. Do you see it, Raj? This is the block.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so to be a pleaser, so you started talking about being a pleaser, right? Still have it a little bit, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of our personality is derived from those early childhood years. And although I don't have that many memories going back so far, and I have to say I was very fortunate when I found the foster parents that I now call my parents. I was very lucky to be brought up in a loving home. So I don't want anybody to think that I had this big tragedy or anything, but this is relating to speech, is that I believe my personal story of how my speech problems began with stuttering and blocking did begin at those early ages. I can't remember really a time that I didn't stutter when I was that young. My first recollection was sitting on a wall on my first day of primary school, about 4. And I remember just feeling that block and being so nervous and really not looking forward to going in, and being scared to walk across the length of the playground and everything like that. And so it did definitely have an impact. And I do believe, for me personally, that is where it began. But like you mentioned, it could be completely different scenario for everybody. It's not unique, it's just, this is my kind of, that's what began my blocking per se.
Of course. And you know what, Roj? I just want to mention this. You mentioned these 2 words, big tragedy. There were no big tragedy. Of course.
Well,
you didn't
you could say that, but then again, I would have preferred to have grown up not stuttering, to be honest.
Of course. No, what I'm saying is that, of course, they did it maybe peacefully. You didn't have to go like some students that I get. They come to me, they were raised during the wartime. Like, the one I'm talking about, right? So being raised in refugee camps, in the war zone, of course, you didn't have all these bombs over your head, but it was kind of a tragedy.
I think it was definitely an emotional tragedy, yeah. It was definitely an emotional impact on me for sure, yeah.
I see. Okay, so Unfortunately, we have to take a break, and I'm going to try not to talk more because I love talking. I let Rog talk about his life because this is his story, and this is a fascinating story. You want to hear it? Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Talk to you in a bit.
You've been listening to Live Stutter-Free with your host, Anna Deeter. Listen each week and learn how to become unblocked, liberated, and live stutter-free with host Anna Deeter.
And welcome back to Live Stutter-Free with your host Anna Deeter on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. In the last segment, we started discussing the blocks and blockers. And today we have an amazing guest, Roger Thompson, the very first Englishman who got unblocked almost 6 years ago in the 3-day Etalon Speech Gymnastics. He basically stopped stuttering almost 6 years ago. And here he is again. So you mentioned that you didn't have any tragedy, but you did have some emotional problem. I mean, emotional tragedy.
When I say tragedy, as in physical or, I didn't have any physical abuse, luckily, because I know a lot of children who grow up in those environments, it does happen. Mine was more psychological, and especially regarding my biological parents as well. I don't want to get into it on the radio. And that's been with me my whole life as well. And so, I feel that I've been lucky to have been able to handle it, but unfortunately it does come with scars. And my scar was, although it wasn't physical, it could be heard, if you know what I mean.
Of course, it did hurt.
And that's how it began. Yeah.
Right. So now let's move on. Yeah. So yes, you remember yourself sitting like 4 years old and not looking forward into speaking. You felt the block. You felt it.
A big insecurity.
You didn't want to go and speak. So what happened next? Someone encouraged you? No, go, Roger, you got to speak.
No, nobody pushed me to speak. I was quite lucky in my family that it was just accepted, something that I was born with. And I guess at that very young age, I just accepted this is how I speak, this is me. But school was difficult, school was tough, especially young, I was quite fortunate again that I didn't get much bullying, but it did happen. And it was tough.
You know what? Let's talk a little bit about how lucky you were. You said I was lucky that my parents accepted it. And this is very important that you brought it up. Yes.
And they were very supportive as well.
Of course. So your parents were very supportive, and this is what I'm talking about. How do we support our children? We give them the best help that we know about.
Yeah, they can only do the best, they're obviously not experts in this.
And this is a big problem. You know why? Yeah. Because they, just like everyone in our society, they were convinced that you were born a genetic freak. Something is wrong with you. Okay? Yeah. Something is wrong with your brain. Something is wrong with your whatever. It's a sickness. And
the knowledge was not there.
Yeah, they were accepting this sickness. They were loving you. And this is why you were fine when you were home. But when you went to the real world, to school, this is when the problem starts. So the very first blockers, unfortunately, are our parents, people who did not provide the stimulating environment. And you don't even know where it happened, when it happened with your life, because you were too young and you had all kinds of parents. So your biological parents were not able to provide you a stimulating environment for learning to speak normally like everyone else. So what happened in school? Who were your next blockers?
I guess it's very hard for me to like point I'm not sure if you're asking me to point blame at who blocked or continued the thing.
Once again, I want everyone to understand I'm not blaming anyone. Teachers do their best, the best of their knowledge. Parents do their best, the best of their knowledge. Speech therapists do whatever is the best of their knowledge. But they all are blockers.
People who are kind of the authority figures in my life at that time, my teachers and support workers, because I've obviously been in care, I had a social worker as well. And so those were the people who obviously I trusted to take care of me and to educate me, to help me grow, you know, at a young age, which I didn't have in those first couple of years as much. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this is what I'm talking about. When there are so many people are responsible for you, and basically no one. Too many responsible for you, and no one. Exactly.
And that's all because of a simple lack of knowledge on the origins of how this came about, with stuttering, and was brought into the mainstream as being, this is a disease, this is something that children are born with.
Exactly. So
I don't believe it is.
So instead of encouraging you when you were 4 to speak more, go and speak. What do you mean you're afraid to speak? Look at me. Say this word. What is this? A cat? Repeat. A cat. Repeat. A cat. See, you did it beautifully. Go and say a cat. Instead of encouraging a child to just contact with their word more frequently and develop normally his speech, you were accepted not to speak. And guess what happens? Yeah. Guess what happens when you don't speak? Can you develop your speech skill without speaking?
No, and that's something that I've learned in the last 5 or 6 years. And going back to that, Anna, with my parents, this was the thing. They loved me, so they accepted me, and they didn't know to push me to speak. I was always very timid and shy when I was growing up, and my stutter was very severe. And so I would always ask my parents to make phone calls for me. If there was a problem at school, I wouldn't tell the teacher. I'd ask my mum to sort it out. And so I got into a habit of, instead of speaking and getting on with it myself and making my own decisions and stuff, it was so comfortable for me to have that blanket of my parents or friends who could do things for me. And that continued throughout my childhood.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so we are again coming to this commercial break that we have to take. Please don't go anywhere, because there's much more interesting to come. We're going to talk about blockers, people who love you the most, people who take care of you, supposedly the best. They are your blockers in reality. Come back to Live Stutter-Free. We are answering the most important yet never answered realistically questions. Talk to you in a bit.
You've been listening to Live Stutter-Free with your host, Anna Deeter. Listen each week and learn how to become unblocked, liberated, and live stutter-free with host Anna Deeter.
Live Stutter-Free with your host Anna Deeter is back. We're coming to you live with BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And I am Anna Deeter. I have a mission to answer the most difficult, the most frequently asked questions that have no realistic answers until now. So we have an amazing guest in the studio, and we are learning how people develop blocks. Who blocks people who stutter? As I mentioned in the previous segment, the cause and definitive mechanism of stuttering was determined 20 years ago by a Russian scientist, independent scientist, academic Roman Snezhko. The definitive solution for the complete elimination of stuttering has been found. And only in 3 days, anyone can have his blocks removed and begin speaking freely, begin moving his body freely, just like everyone else. There is no need for cure, treatment, or long-term speech practice. No need. So Roger is here, and he was talking about his first blockers. His early childhood, he had several sets of foster parents. They were the first blockers. No one was responsible for providing him a stimulating environment for him to develop his speech. Let's see what happens in school. Did anyone kind of encouraged you to develop your speech, to speak more, to contact with the word, Roger?
They definitely didn't bring it up as a main talking point or sat me down to say, you know, we need to start speaking more here, build your confidence. I remember getting reports at school about my speech. I still have copies that I found from when I was about 8 or something.
Really?
And yeah, and I think I was always put into the kind of like special ed, I think you call it in America, into the more, you know, underdeveloped kind of classes, because I think it was back then seen as a disability, maybe a mental disability in a way.
Still is. It still is, Roger.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Even though it shouldn't be, because it doesn't, I don't believe, I'm not the most intelligent guy in the world, but I don't believe it impacts, you know, that part of your brain. You know, it's definitely, as you say in your book, it's a skill. It's something that comes by repetition, learning how to do it correctly, obviously.
Okay,
and the rest is natural. Yeah.
All right, but did they give you any help? They didn't know, obviously, how to help you, but how did they attempt to help?
I think the way they attempted to help was by kind of isolating me, and not by putting me in a corner like a bad little boy, but more in the way of looking after me by protecting me. Like if they knew the class was reading out loud or something, sometimes I'd get away with not doing it. One early childhood memory that I do have was when we had an assembly. It was around Christmas, and we had to do a project and stand up in front of the whole assembly and do some kind of presentation. And I remember, and this is one of my earliest memories, I don't have many from that age, and it was on the Emperor Penguin, I remember. And I remember that, and I probably remember it because it was such a tragic event in my life. And I remember just being up there and just freezing. And I was stood there for like a minute, and I just burst out crying and walked out of the assembly. And that had a massive impact on me because it's one of my earliest memories. But I think the way the teachers used to help me was just by protecting me, you know. They knew that I had a speech impediment, but I don't think that was probably the best way to deal with things. You know?
Roger, I have to interrupt you. And they had no clue how to help you. They loved you. They liked you. They wanted to help, but they didn't know how.
No.
That's why they kind of decided not to deal with you. You were allowed not to speak, and they, in this way, they didn't have to deal with you. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So they put you in special education. There you probably have speech therapy, did you?
This was what I was going to come on to, yeah. I think I was referred to speech therapy when I was young, maybe in primary school. And I did that for maybe 2 or 3 years. As I say, I don't recall the exact details, but I remember I did that for a good 3 or 4 years from about the age of 6 or 7. And then I had a break when I went to secondary school. And that,
so what did they teach you there, if you remember anything, because really you were young?
Yeah, of course. I don't remember the first part, but I remember I asked my mum if I could go back in my second year in secondary school because I was having a hard time. It was struggling, English talks and whatnot. So I did go back on the council program. So basically what we used to do was just go through these picture cards for like children with like cat and dog and spoon. And I just had to repeat those. And then we did a little bit of reading out loud, speaking slowly.
So you basically did something. So yeah, I know. No, I am talking about it. I mean, I'm asking you about it because some people will relate to this. And now with your knowledge and understanding, do normal people, normally children, when they develop speech, do they do all of this?
No, they don't. And
they don't speak slowly. Nobody teaches them to speak slowly.
This is very prevalent right now. I've got a young nephew who's knocking on the door of 4 now. So I've watched him grow up. And I do remember when he was 2, he had these little bits of hesitations in his speech. And of course, I didn't say anything or anything like that. And he came around a few days ago and his speech is just absolutely beautiful, chatting away like a young little boy. Because, he was just allowed to express himself, and make mistakes because that's what people do, that's how you learn. And I think because of my earlier experience, I didn't give myself as well the freedom to just make mistakes. I just felt like I had to impress somebody. And so that put so much pressure onto me and it created that fear of speaking. And I feel once you get that fear of speaking and just talking about it now, I can remember... I can recall it.
Yeah. Roger, hold this thought. Nice. Hold this thought because we are coming again to the commercial break, believe it or not. We're going to believe with that. Don't forget. Okay? So please listen to this amazing life story of a former stutterer, lifetime stutterer, severe stutterer, who was unblocked in only 3 days and forgot about stuttering. Okay? So talk to you in a bit.
You've been listening to Live Stutter-Free with your host, Anna Deeter. Listen each week and learn how to become unblocked, liberated, and live stutter-free with host Anna Deeter.
And we are back with Live Stutter-Free with your host, Anna Deeter, on BBM Global Network. Our guest today is Roger Thompson from United Kingdom. He is the very first Englishman who used to stutter severely for his lifetime. He was blocked, and no matter what stuttering programs he's been through, he still remained blocked. He didn't have much success in his previous treatment or cure programs. So he's been through a 3-day Etalon Speech Gymnastics course and lost his stuttering there almost 6 years ago. So Roger, so you mentioned that your blockers were teachers and speech therapists in the beginning while you still were in school. What happened after the school?
Right. That's quite a jump forward in time. So after school, it came to the time where I needed to think about a career, what I'm going to do. So my speech obviously played a massive part in that. I did very well at school. I had a 100% attendance record, which sounds crazy, but my parents were against me taking any time off school, but I wasn't that sick. But I do remember I did skip a couple of classes, like English talks. I do remember sitting in the toilet for a whole hour because I was just too terrified to go through it. Anyway, I know we're very short on time here, so I'll skip.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, okay?
Okay.
Take your time.
It came to choosing a career. Now, I wanted to go to university, and continue my education, and school wasn't that bad. I was very lucky that I was in a good group of friends, kind of the guys who you don't mess with. So I was quite lucky that I wasn't getting so much bullying. But I was afraid of university. I'd definitely have to do presentations, and I'd kind of had enough of that. So I thought, what career could I do where I'd be in the background and not have to speak? And the only thing I could think of was cooking. So that's why I decided to become a chef, really. And here I am 20 years later. I'm not sure it was the best decision of my life, but
you know what?
I built a passion on it, and it's fine. Yeah. And it was good. And I've had experiences and traveled. So I'm very
Let me interrupt you. I want to make a correction. You have become the best chef because I have tried your meals that you cooked for me when you visited me in California.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
So we have a couple of minutes left. Roj, I want you just maybe to say a couple of words before I'm going to give information where people can find the information about our program. So how did it go right after the program? I know it was so hard during the class. It was first time for you, for me. Yeah. How did it go after the program?
It was a lot of mixed emotions, so much joy. You know, I'm free. And from day one, it was so brilliant going back to work and expressing myself. And yeah, I just felt really free, you know, and it was fantastic. And then
because you were unblocked. You were unblocked. See, we are going to wrap it up now for today, but I'm sure we're going to continue because we are having so much fun.
Yeah.
Live Stutter-Free is going on. And I recommend, if you want to learn more, please go to the website, which is www.livestutterfree.com, LIVE stutterfree.com, and learn more. You can also download my free ebooks, and you can purchase my book that is for sale. So stuttering is sold. If you want to learn more, educate yourself.
You've been listening to Live Stutter-Free with your host, Anna Deeter. Listen each week and learn how to become unblocked, liberated, and live stutter-free with host Anna Deeter.
You've been listening to the BBM Global Network. The ideas, views, and opinions of this broadcast are those of the participants of the program and are not necessarily the ideas, views, and opinions of the BBM Global Network Company.